Anyway, this is week 4, Intermediate Hebrew. You can find the notes for this class at theregathering.com/page/PFT-Hebrew2. You do have to have a Regathering account in order to do that. The account is free. You can also find past teachings from this class on YouTube, on the Passion for Truth video YouTube channel. Okay? All right. Well, today we're going to talk about adjectives. This is going to be a two-part teaching because adjectives seem to be a complicated subject for a lot of people, so I want to split it up into two parts. Okay, first of all, I'm going to cover a little, go over some Hebrew terms for some parts of speech. A noun in Hebrew is called a shem etzem. Okay? Shem etzem is a noun. Shem etzem literally means name of essence. Okay? And a noun is a person, place, or thing. So a shem etzem, a noun, is kind of describing the essence of an object. Okay, the essential properties of an object. Okay? An adjective in Hebrew is called a toar hashem. Okay, toar hashem is an adjective. Sometimes it's shortened to just toar. And toar hashem, the shem here is referring to the shem in the shem etzem of a noun. So this literally means describer of the name, but it means describer of the noun. Okay, toar is describer. Okay, so that is what an adjective does, is it describes a noun. Yes, Yeshua would have been a describer of the Torah. Okay? In a dictionary and in your vocabulary lists, an adjective is depicted by a small a small tav, okay, standing for toar, which is written next to the word. So if you look up a word in a Hebrew dictionary and it has a small tav next to it, you know this word you're looking up is an adjective. Okay, and on our vocabulary lists that you can find online or that you have right in front of you, that small tav next to the word is an indicator that the word is an adjective. Okay, and of course masculine nouns are still depicted by a small zayin and feminine nouns by a small nun. Okay.
And what was the reason for those?
Just so you know what part of speech the word in question is. Oh, okay, the zayin and nun. Zayin stands for zachar, which means masculine, and nun stands for nekeva, which means feminine. Okay? So adjectives, toar hashem. Zachar, which is masculine. Zayin, chaf, resh. Okay, Zachar is masculine. In a strictly Hebrew course, I would always use these terms, but I'm still going to say masculine and feminine in the English. Nekeva, spelled like this, means feminine. Okay. So this nun and zayin, what we use to indicate gender of nouns. All right? Okay. Okay, so adjectives. Adjectives in Hebrew function just like adjectives in English, or any other language for that matter. They describe nouns. So in the phrase, say, blue car, car is a noun, blue is a noun that modifies car. Or, I'm sorry, blue is an adjective that modifies car. Or big, or noisy, or take your pick, okay? We all understand what adjectives are. Yeah, right. Anything that describes a noun is an adjective. Okay, there are two major rules governing adjectives in Hebrew, and today we're going to focus on the first of those rules. Next week we'll go over the second one. And that is, in Hebrew, adjectives always follow the nouns that they modify. This is the opposite of the rule in English. So in English, if we wish to call a car blue, we say a blue car. But in Hebrew, if we wish to call a car blue, the order of words would be reversed. Okay? To put this in actual Hebrew terminology, we have an adjective, tov, which means good. So if we wish to speak of a good father, he's not a tov av, but he is an av tov. Okay, so as you're reading this, you'll say father good, but it means good father. The rule is the opposite in Hebrew that it is in the English. The adjective always follows the noun that it modifies. Okay, so I have a number of adjectives listed on that sheet. Tov is good. Wrong is evil. Gadol is big or great. And katan is small.
That's what they call that little shirt thing with the tzitzit.
Yes, the talit katan. Right. Talit being the garment itself, the noun. Katan being the adjective that modifies the noun. That's why it's a talit katan and not a katan talit. Okay? You'll see this phrase a number of places. For example, the word boker means morning. Okay? The phrase for good morning is boker tov. Okay? Morning good, good morning. All right? And you see this time and time again. In fact, there's some real good ways to remember all of these words. Tov, of course, you'll encounter time and time again. That's one you should just memorize. But phrases like boker tov are Laila tov, good night. Erev tov, good evening. Yom tov, good day. Yes? Tov is ubiquitous. Okay. The tov occurs in Hebrew as much as good does in English. Okay? Ra is the opposite of tov. Okay, evil. But this ayin can pronounce as a kind of the swallowing guttural sound. We'll get to that, I think, next week in beginning Hebrew. But anyway, that renders this being pronounced wrong. sounds a lot like wrong, so it's a great way to remember that wrong.
It's not raw.
No, it depends on which dialect. Some dialects would just pronounce it ra, with no special pronunciation of the ayin.
I figured maybe the Egyptians had a sun god Ra, so evil is Ra.
Yes, that is an interesting feature of the two words. But I don't know that they're necessarily linguistically related. More likely, it's more related to the Hebrew word ra'ah, which means to see. Okay, but interesting coincidence that. But yes, wrong is a great way to remember the word ra, or wrong. Okay, gadol is part of a phrase that you'll hear a lot in Messianic circles, the Kohen HaGadol. That's the high priest. Literally, gadol is big or great, but it doesn't mean the big priest. Okay, this is gadol being used in another one of its senses to mean the greatest, the highest. Okay, the high priest, could have been 5'1". It doesn't really matter. Point is that he's the ultimate priest. And katan. Well, there's various ways to remember katan. The way I remember katan is that there's a Japanese short sword called a katana. That's back from I was a 90s child, and so the Ninja Turtles, Leonardo had 2 katanas. That's how I remember katan. That's not necessarily the best way, but that is what it brings to my mind. So, but yes, gadol and katan, big and small. Okay. So, just going over let's just start using these to modify some of the nouns we have. I've gone over a lot of vocabulary, or at least I've passed out a lot of vocabulary, but I haven't really gone into depth on it. So I want to discuss some of these words, because your vocabulary is a very important part of learning the language. Okay, so I mentioned boker being morning. I'll go ahead and put katan up here. Okay, boker spelled bait, cholam vowel, kuf, segel vowel, and then resh. Okay, boker is morning. Now, you can't really speak of a small morning or a big morning, but you could speak of a good morning or a bad morning, although you probably say boker tov much more than boker ra. At least I hope so. Okay, so boker tov, very common expression, good morning. All right, I also have erev on here. Erev is spelled ayin, resh, bait with no dagish, a segel under the ayin and a segel under the resh. Okay, erev. You can also say erev tov, good evening.
Is there a reason it's an ayin and not an aleph? I'm sure there is.
I don't know that there's a word ayin resh bait. I don't think there is, but no, that is the spelling, regardless. Yeah, I don't think there's another word that's spelled with an aleph instead, but yeah, no, I don't know the reason behind why it's an ayin instead of an aleph. But and actually,
There's a reason. It's spelled the same way, only change that letter and it's a different word.
right? Yeah, there are words like that. I can't think of a word where you replace that ayin with an aleph. There's a few places in the scriptures where traditionally in a Torah scroll certain letters are written bigger than all the others. And sometimes the reasoning behind that is because if by mistake that letter was changed to another letter, it would totally change the meaning of the verse. So the Shema has 2 letters that are written much larger in a traditional Torah scroll than the other letters in the phrase. And there's one in the word Shema itself. Shema ends in an ayin. And of course, Shema, this is a tangent, by the way. This doesn't have to do with adjectives, so don't need to take extensive Okay, so they write this ayin large. They do that because, at least the tradition holds that this is done because if this ayin were changed to an aleph, instead of being Shema, which means listen, okay, listen Israel, it would mean destroy. Yes. So that's the stated reason for why they make it larger than the other letters.
What I learned was the Shema, you have the ayin that is large, and then it ends in the dalet that is large, and those two letters spell aid, which means to teach.
It means, aid is a witness.
You are, witness. You are to be a witness.
Right.
Hear this. You are commanded to be a witness in this.
Yeah, I'm sure they had multiple reasons for doing it, but the one that I've heard is that so that you make sure that this is always translated listen instead of destroy. And yes, the other one is a dalet, and that's the dalet in the word echad, which means one. And that's because if that dalet were confused with a resh, instead of meaning one, it would mean another. Okay? And of course, to say the Lord our God is another totally defeats the meaning of the Shema. So that's the explanation I heard for why those two letters are made larger than the rest. Okay? But I don't think this could be confused with another word, but my vocabulary isn't big enough to really know. But whatever the case, Erev is spelled with an ayin at the front. Okay, so Boker and Erev, morning and evening. And of course we have Lila. Erev is kind of can also be rendered sundown or sunset. It's kind of the period of time it's referring to. Whereas Lila means night. Okay, so Lila occurs after Erev. Okay, it's the dark part of the day. Lila Tov, good night, another common phrase. Okay. How about Bayit? Bait, Yod, Tav, the Patach under the Bait and a Chirik under the Yod. Okay, Bayit. Bayit is a house. Okay, so a Bayit Tov would be a good house. Okay, a Bayit Ra would be a bad house. How do we say a small house, like the apartment that I used to live in? Okay. Bayit Katan, yes. Bayit Katan is a small house. Okay, and again, just beating this dead horse, the adjective comes after the noun it modifies. So you do in fact say Bayit Katan to mean small house. And a big house would be Bayit Gadol, big house. Okay. All right, how about dog? Dalet Gimel. Dog is a fish. Okay, a big fish would be a dog gadol. Small fish would be a dog katan. Okay? All right. Any questions about adjectives in general, how they function, or is this all kind of pretty straightforward? Okay.
So then these are all, you would say, neutral adjectives.
What do you mean neutral?
As in they don't change masculine.
Okay, now that is the second part of adjectives, which I went through this much faster than I intended to, so I'll just go ahead and do part 2 since this seems to be making sense. Jump right into that, okay? And we'll go over it again next week because a lot of people have trouble with adjectives. So, okay, so part 2, the second rule about adjectives, and I'll go through it one step at a time, is that, yes, all of the nouns that I put up here that I modified with tov, gadol, ra, and katan, those were all masculine nouns, okay? And that's why I could use those adjectives to modify them. One of the rules concerning adjectives, if you remember verbs last week, when I had a feminine subject, we had to have a feminine verb, okay? If we had a feminine subject and a masculine verb, the sentence doesn't make sense. Okay, somebody else is running or is coming or is doing whatever, and then there's this feminine subject, the sentence must be parsed some other way. There's other words involved here that we're not seeing. Okay, but adjectives function the same way as verbs in that regard, okay, that if we have a masculine noun, we have to modify it with a masculine adjective. If we have a feminine noun, we have to modify it with a feminine adjective. Okay, so another word we have here, eretz. Right, eretz means land. You'll hear it in the phrase Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. It can also mean country. So that phrase can also mean the country of Israel. If we wish to speak of, land, eretz is a feminine noun. Okay, so land is feminine. So if we wish to speak of a good land, tov is in the masculine form, so we cannot say eretz tov. Okay, we need a feminine adjective to modify eretz. Now, in order to do that, we don't have to find some completely different word that means good but is feminine. All we have to do is modify tov to make it feminine. And adjectives, unlike nouns, adjectives have this flexibility. Okay, the adjective can change gender in order to accommodate the noun you wish to modify. Okay, so in order to make tov feminine, we do the same thing that we did with ba last week, which is we've got tov as normal, and we add comets, hey, making tova. Okay? So tova means the same as tov, it's just in the feminine form. It is indeed. Tova is indeed a lady's name. And that's what it means. It means good. But anyway, Eretz Tova would be a good land. Okay? Then we can speak of other kinds of lands. How about a small country or a small land? Right, Eretz Katan. However, right, Katan would be the masculine form. To change it to feminine, to accommodate Eretz, which is a feminine noun, we do the same thing, add the comets hey. And a lot of times there's also a vowel change that will occur in conjunction with this. I don't want to go into detail on that because I'd have to cover a whole lot more rules in order to do that. Don't worry about that so much. As long as you've got the ending correct, masculine or feminine, I'm going to say you're good. Okay, you got the idea. All right, so Eretz Katana would be a small land. Okay, how about a big land? Right. Gadol is our masculine for large or big. To make it feminine, add comets hey. And this one actually does undergo a vowel change also. Don't worry about it. If you say Gadola versus Gadola, everyone's still going to know what you're talking about. Okay? But this is a technicality that later on we'll understand a little better. All right? The important thing is to match the masculine form with the masculine nouns and the feminine form with the feminine nouns. And the feminine form can always be reached in an adjective by simply adding comets he. Okay? Now again, this does not apply to nouns. Some nouns you can do this to, but most you cannot. You can't just change a noun from masculine to feminine and vice versa. Okay, nouns are what they are. But adjectives are dynamic. They will change to accommodate the noun you wish to modify. Okay?
On the paper, you have these vocab words as the type is a tov.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Okay, the tav next to the word stands for toar. Toar, which is adjective in Hebrew. If you look up words in a Hebrew dictionary, like if you look up words in an English dictionary, they'll have a little abbreviation next to the word indicating the part of speech the word belongs to. Hebrew dictionaries have the same thing, and so the tav is an abbreviation for toar, which means adjective. So that's why that's there. And the small zayin and nun stand for zachar and nekeva, which are masculine and feminine, which means it's a noun, and it's just telling you the gender of the noun. But yes, that's what the tav is for. Okay, and a bad land. Nekeva, yes, is the word for feminine. Okay, Ra would be the masculine form, add comets he, and now we have the feminine form of Ra, which is Ra'ah, a bad land. Okay? And a lot of times, I chose land as my noun, but there are many nouns that end themselves in a comets he, many feminine nouns that end in a comets he. So the phrase will kind of have some parity. Okay, so for example, if I were to speak of a bad woman, not that there are any, but if I were to speak of this hypothetical entity, okay, woman, isha, ends in comets he, as do many feminine nouns. Okay, so a bad woman would be isha ra'ah. Or let's just change that to good woman. Isha tova, okay, a good woman. Whereas a good man is ish. Ish is man. Ish tov. Okay. So ish tov, good man. Isha tova, good woman. Okay. So not all nouns end in this comets he, but many of them do, and it gives a kind of sort of melodic character to the language. Okay, so that's how the gender of the adjective will change to fit the noun that it's modifying. Okay, are there any other questions about that? Okay. Okay, there's another way in which adjectives are flexible, and that is in their number. So, another word from our vocabulary list this week is eitz, or geitz. And geitz is a tree. Okay? So if we are to speak of a big tree, that would be an eitz gadol. Okay? A big tree. All right? Now if we make eitz plural to mean trees, then we add our cherik yod mem, so eitzim. Okay. If we're to speak of big trees, though, we have to change the form of the adjective to match the number of the noun. Okay, so eitz is singular, and gadol is the singular form, okay, of big. Okay, it's also masculine. For eitzim, we can't say eitzim gadol, because gadol is singular. So to make it plural, we do the same thing that we do to make nouns plural. Im. And again, this has a vowel change. Don't worry about that. The ending is what's important. Eitzim gedolim, big trees. So eitz gadol, eitzim gedolim. All right? And of course, it doesn't have to refer to a tree. If we were to speak of men, okay, well, using good man that we had before as opposed to big man, ish tov, anashim, because that's the irregular plural of ish, as we discussed last week, anashim tovim, good men, yes. I'll go ahead and write that up here, just so we have it. Okay, ish tov, that's a good man. Okay, plural of ish is anashim. It's an irregular plural, but one that you'll encounter frequently. Okay, we do the same thing to tov that we did with gadol. Chirik, yod mem, the masculine plural suffix. This becomes good men. We have the same situation with the parity of the endings. Ends in im, ends in im. Okay, a lot of times that's the case. Now, it will happen that when we have words with irregular plural endings, things get a little jumbled up. Adjectives do not have irregular plural endings. Okay? All endings on adjectives are consistent. Okay, so for av, which is father. Okay, Av Tov would be a good father. Now, Av is a masculine word, but it has an irregular plural form. Okay, so when Av is made plural, it takes ot. Avot. Now, even though it takes this irregular plural, even though this is normally the plural that's added to a feminine noun, avot is still a masculine word. Okay, this is an irregular plural form. The adjective doesn't care if it's an irregular plural form. It only cares about the gender of the noun. So when we speak of good fathers, avot tovim. Okay, so these irregularities can get a little confusing because we're used to the endings being the same. The important thing is the gender. The adjective will always match the gender, no matter what irregularities are in the noun. Okay? And the feminine plural follows the same rule as the masculine plural. So if we were to speak of using our example, well, let's not use that one. Let's use, instead, let's use a different feminine noun to make it a little bit easier. Okay. Torah. A Torah is law. So if we wish to speak of a good law, be Torah. Now Torah is feminine, so we have to use a feminine adjective. Torah, tova, okay, would be a good law. What about good laws? Plural of Torah, since it's feminine, it will take ot, and since it ends in a hey, the hey will disappear when the suffix is added. So Torot is laws. Okay, good laws. We'll add the feminine plural ending to tov. So Torot, Tovot. Torah tova, Torot tovot. Hebrew is probably a fun language for kids to learn. Okay, but just like, okay, I'm going to give another example. Well, I'll give another normal example. Okay, Torah tova, Torot tovot. And, bracha. Bracha is a blessing. Okay? So a great blessing, a big blessing, would be bracha gedola, because bracha is a feminine noun. The Kametz Hey is kind of a giveaway that it's a feminine noun. Okay? So, bracha gedola, a great blessing, a big blessing. Okay, how about great blessings? Brachot, gedolot. Yes. Pardon my sloppy writing. Okay. Brachot, gedolot. Great blessings. Okay. Bracha gedola, brachot gedolot. Okay. All right, and again, this adjective only cares about the gender. It does not care about irregular endings. So using our earlier example of a good woman, okay, Isha Tova. Now, woman has an irregular plural form. You'd think it'd be Ishot, but in fact, plural of Isha is Nashim. Okay, very irregular form. All right, not only does it take the masculine ending, but the aleph totally disappears and is replaced by this sort of ninja nun sneaking in there. Okay, so Nashim is women. Okay, but even though it ends in im, it's the plural of a feminine noun. It's an irregular plural, so this is still a feminine noun. Feminine plural noun, Nashim. So if we're to speak of good women, we don't add the masculine ending, we add the feminine ending. Okay, so this becomes Nashim Tovot. Good women. Okay? So with the irregular plurals, we don't have that same parity that we like to see at the endings of the words, and that help us to remember them so well. All right, it is just something to be aware of, though, that these irregularities do occur. The adjective doesn't care what irregularities are there. It always follows masculine, feminine, singular, plural in the normal form. Okay? So, the adjective always follows the noun, and the adjective accommodates the gender and number of the noun. It changes to accommodate the gender and number of the noun that it's modifying. Okay, so nouns are static, nouns don't change. Adjectives are dynamic. They will change to accommodate the nouns that they are modifying. And in fact, one thing you can do, every adjective I give, by the way, I will give in the masculine singular form, because that's the form you'll most often use it in. So on your sheet, and this is how a dictionary will give it also. So on your sheet I've given you tov, but tov really has 4 forms. Okay, it has a masculine form, masculine singular form, tov, right? It has the feminine singular form, tova, right? Just adding our comets, hey. Masculine plural is tovim. And feminine plural is tovot. So every Hebrew adjective has these 4 forms inherent in it. Okay? And it just switches between these forms to accommodate whatever word you happen to be modifying. Okay? So ish tov, anashim tovim, isha tova, nashim tovot. Okay? So if you're ever at a loss as to what to do with an adjective, remember this chart. Okay. Are there any other questions about adjectives? I'll cover the last part of that next week. Yeah, I know I'm erasing this too quickly, but
Anashim was men, women is
nashim.
So if a person's talking really fast, you would have to listen closely to see whether they're saying anashim or nashim.
Yes, you do have to pay attention between anashim and nashim, men and women. Ish and isha are usually pretty easy to grasp. But yes, somebody was talking to me the other day, and they were saying, well, am I saying this right? And they were saying ha-nashim, which is the women. Okay, putting the ha, the definite article, in front of nashim, which is a perfectly valid word. But I thought they were saying anashim, which is men. Totally different than what they were trying to say. So, and it kind of made them second guess themselves. And I'm like, no, you're doing it. Once they explain, I'm like, no, you're doing it right. But yes, it does take a keen ear to tell the difference. And of course, if we were around Hebrew-speaking people all the time, wouldn't be so bad. In English, there's plenty of words that sound very much alike, and since we hear English all the time, we don't have trouble discriminating between those words. And Hebrew-speaking people likewise don't have that difficulty. But yes, that is something to be aware of, is those plural forms. Now, reading it, it's much easier to tell. So, but in speech, that's one thing you'll notice, though, with these adjectives and also with verbs sometimes too, this parity in endings. Okay, so, torot, tovot, good laws. And you won't necessarily hear that specific phrase, but phrases like that, they stand out. It rhymes. So, anyway, it's kind of nice. Even though the gender is an added little feature that we don't have in English, it still lends some parity to the language that we don't have in English. When you say blue car, the only way you know that those words go together is because blue immediately precedes car. There's nothing about the endings or about anything other about the words that kind of tells you that they go together. But Hebrew has that added dimension that kind of, except in the irregular cases, that tells you when words belong together. So, okay, any other questions? All right. Well, we'll see you next week. Shalom.